Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Tuesday, and so that means it's Tag Tuesday, and I wasn't going to let that slip. I already released a video today, but I will go Steve Donahue mode and release a couple of videos today. I was going through old tags and trying to see which one I wanted to do when I came across this tag created by Greg over at Another Bibliophile Reads called the Bookish A to Z Hot or Not tag. And it's got a prompt for every letter of the alphabet, and you're just supposed to go through and say whether or not it's hot or not, something that you do or like, or something that you don't do or don't like. And one of the instructions is to stay on topic, so I will try to do that in this video. But before I get into that, I wanted to mention that the book giveaway is still going on, and today I thought I'd offer up Frankenstein by Mary Shelley in a Norton Critical Edition. So if this looks interesting to you, it is in brand new condition. It's got a very nice critical apparatus in the back. I remember I needed to get this copy for college. So if you want, there's no markings in it or anything like that. So if you want it, let me know. My email's in the description, and I would absolutely be happy to package this up and send it to you, provided, of course, that you're in the continental United States. But okay, moving on. Here's the tag. A is for audiobooks. For me, I really like audiobooks. If you watched my BookTube newbie tag, you know that I actually was an audiobook for somebody. So I've always had a respect for audiobooks, and I really enjoy them. I don't listen to them that often. And the weird thing about audiobooks is that there aren't many audiobooks that like stand out to me as being like exceptional. I do remember I listened to an audiobook for what was it called? It was for Brideshead Revisited, Evelyn Waugh, Brideshead Revisited, and that was done by Jeremy Irons. And I thought he did an incredible job with that, so I do recommend that one. But overall, audiobooks for me are definitely hot. I like them. Number 2 is Bildungsroman. Books dealing with a person's formative years or spiritual education. Kind of a classic within literature. So many famous Bildungsroman out there. I like them. I would say that I can't indulge too often in them because I will get sick of them. It's not that they're all like formulaic or anything like that, but there are so many different stories to tell, and sometimes it feels like a lot of books targeted to high schoolers, books targeted to younger people follow that Bildungsroman format, and it can get a little tiresome for me. So definitely hot, but not a type of fiction that I read extremely often, or especially back to back. C is for children's books. I gotta say, I don't really have much occasion to read children's books, although I do have respect for authors who make good ones. I've heard that it's very hard to do. But for me personally, right now in my life, I don't have much occasion to read for children's books. But hopefully that'll change at some point. D is for digital. I am a digital reader. I have a Kindle. I have another e-reader as well, called a Kobo, that I really like. So yes, I do read digital, and I enjoy reading digital because it is extremely convenient. There are, of course, drawbacks and limitations, but there are drawbacks and limitations for physical copies as well. So it's just kind of par for the course. E is experimental. The first word that comes to my mind when I think of experimental, and I've had experimental books, and I've had a lot of experience with them, is overrated. I think that most experimental fiction is now, and this is just my perspective now, after spending like 4 years kind of trying to read experimental fiction and thinking that I was really cool because I was reading experimental fiction. Now I really don't have much patience for it at all. I think it can be done well. I think that there's experimental fiction out there that is cool, but I think overall experimental fiction is overrated. It is one of those types of fiction that people assume is sophisticated when it turns out that in many cases it is. It's just it's no more sophisticated than an Agatha Christie novel. It is no more sophisticated than a cut and dry murder mystery. And in a lot of cases, it might actually be less sophisticated than that, because the author might genuinely not know or not be capable of writing a tight, cohesive plot, narrative, and so throws all of that. What's the word? All of that ability to do so to the wind, and then just does something quote unquote experimental, and then it passes as that, and they can earn this badge of sophistication in a very cheap way. I think sometimes. I'm not going to give examples because I don't want to be contentious here, but for me, that's the first word that comes to mind. Even though I do think that there are instances in which experimental novels can be cool. F is for fantasy. I don't read much fantasy. I want to. I definitely want to, but I don't. So that's hopefully something that I'll rectify at some point. Graphic novel is G. I used to love graphic novels. I don't read them that much anymore. I love The Watchmen. I still have my graphic novels at my parents' place, so they're still around. I hope I still have them. I hope my mother didn't throw them all away. But I was a big fan of Batman graphic novels. The Watchmen was incredible. I also was a big fan of Sandman when I was a kid. So there's a bunch of graphic novels that I have history with, and I really enjoyed them. I don't read them that much anymore, but I am still a fan. I'll still say that that's hot. Letter H is for horror. I'm a fan. Well, I'm offering Frankenstein, and I love Frankenstein. There are plenty of horror books that I've read that I've really enjoyed. I think it's I don't read it that much, but when I do, I think it's pretty cool. So that gets a hot from me. I is inspirational. No, I don't think so. Anything that tries to be inspirational usually isn't. Anything that doesn't try to be inspirational might end up being inspirational, but anything that tries to be inspirational is typically not that great, at least in my experience. J is for journalism. I love a good piece of journalism. I think that a good piece of journalism can actually be invaluable, and some of my favorite books are written by journalists. Michael Massing, who is a journalist, he wrote a book called Fatal Discord about the Reformation, and he says in that book that he's not a historian, he's a journalist, and he's going to approach it like a journalist. I think it came out really well. One of my favorite books that I read last year was a journalist, I think at the New York Times. He does their music section called Alex. His name's Alex Ross. He wrote a book called Wagnerism, which I thought was incredible. That isn't... those two aren't like typical pieces of journalism, but I just talked about John Reed's 10 Days That Shook the World. That's a piece of journalism that I thought was incredible. On that subject, David Remnick wrote a book called Lenin's Tomb that is incredible, about the fall of the Soviet Union, that I thought was amazing. So journalism can be incredible, and it can be very moving, and it can transport you into the world that the journalist is talking about. So I am a fan of journalism when it's done well. Typically, I don't read the New York Times or anything like that right now, but if a good piece of journalism comes out in book form, especially if it's an older piece of journalism like David Remnick's Lenin's Tomb, and it's about something that I'm interested in, that'll absolutely be something that I seek out and read for sure. So that's a hot for me. K is for kitsch. Books that have popular sentimental appeal. I don't know about popular. Sentimental, I have books that are sentimental to me, for sure. Books that might not be very good, but are sentimental to me in one way or another. Or maybe not even good, but like special. Books that are not very special, but they do have sentimental appeal to me. I would say that kitsch is something that I don't dismiss. It has to actually be kitschy though. Like, it can't be fake. You can't put it on as a kind of a disguise or whatever. I'm thinking of at least 2 books right now that I've read somewhat recently that, to me, felt like they were going for kitsch and failed because it was too contrived. I won't say the names of those 2 books, but I really did not like them. So if it's a genuinely kitschy thing, then that's totally fine. But if it's putting it on as a show, that is definitely suspect to me. L is library. Big fan of libraries. Like libraries a lot. I have multiple library cards. I have the Libby app. That helps me check out electronic e-copies, which I think are fantastic. It's a fantastic service, but also going to the library and reading is something that I try and do just to get out of the house and get some reading done outside of the house, and they're great. That's a huge hot for me, absolutely. M is mystery. I've recently been getting into mysteries. I had 2 people reach out to me on my video last week on Friday where I talked about what I had read, and I had mentioned in that video that I was looking for recommendations for mystery novels, and 2 people very kindly gave me recommendations in the comments of that video. So speaking of libraries, I will be checking those out of the library and reading those for next month's TBR. I saw that my library had both, so I'm very excited about that, and I can't wait to read more mysteries. And as for nonfiction, that's the hottest thing on this list. I'm a huge nonfiction fan. I've made that clear. The last book that I just talked about in the video that I uploaded today is about a nonfiction book. Absolute fan. O is for Omnibus. I don't have any. I have actually a couple, I think. Yeah, like 2. They're usually pretty big, pretty unwieldy, so I don't really go for them. And I would actually say, speaking of electronic copies, that if you're going to get a big collected works of somebody, it is oftentimes better, in my opinion, to go with the electronic version because it's much more readable. But anyway, P is for poetry. Been trying to get into poetry too. Next month, we're doing the Sonnets of Shakespeare for Randy Ray's book club. I can't wait to read that. I got my copy of that recently, so I am trying to get more into poetry. Q is for quests, when the protagonist goes on a quest, physical or spiritual. I feel like this is super broad, and it would be impossible to say that that is not hot, I think, because most great pieces of literature are quests in some way. So that is definitely hot for me, for sure. R is romance. Romance is a huge category. There's tons of different things that qualify as romance. So same thing as Q. I definitely would say that that's hot. Romance is not something that I dismiss by any stretch of the imagination. It is also not something that I read that often, but I'd love to get more into it. Same thing goes for science fiction, so we get 3 in a row. Science fiction, definitely hot. Just not something that I read all that often, but definitely hot. T is for translation. Books translated from one language into another. Also great. Love translated literature, for sure. I've read a lot of really great translations, and translations are actually cool because they offer you an opportunity to re-experience something that you've read before in a new translation, and that can be a very fun experience. So definitely, that's hot for me. U is for Übermensch. Books that feature a Superman or the extraordinary human, characters who can do everything. Can't say I've read many books that qualify as having an Übermensch in them. I did read a long time ago, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and that was awful. Although at the time I didn't think I wanted to admit that. But I will be reading, I think I will be reading more of that going forward. Tarzan books and things like that, where I think Tarzan is kind of an Übermensch character. I'll read more of that going forward and report back. V is for Victorian. Literature from 1837 to 1901. Great. Love Victorian literature. Fantastic. A staple of schools. You read a lot. I remember reading some Victorian literature in high school, but Victorian literature is fantastic. Charles Dickens, is great. I mean, there's so many. You know them. We all know them. We all love them. It's hard to just dismiss Victorian literature, and I certainly don't. So that definitely gets a hot from me. W is for Western. I love Westerns. I love a good Western. I've read really good Westerns before, so that's definitely a hot from me. X is for X-rated. I'm assuming this is related to erotica literature, which I don't read. So that's gonna get. I think that's a not for me, but I don't know. It could be good, but I'm not really looking. I don't seek that out, and I don't really have any on my TBR. So I'm gonna say no on that. Y is for young adult. No, I don't read any young adult. I read I read Harry Potter. And I definitely, when I was a young adult, I read some young adult, but I don't take it with me. I don't go forward with it or carry it into my adulthood much. So I'm gonna say that's a not for me. Most young adult books, I think I would not be interested in reading. And then Z is Zeitgeist, books that express the spirit or mood of the times. I guess it depends on what it is. If it expresses the mood or the spirit or the mood of the times, and that time is a time period that I'm very interested in, then that book is incredibly valuable to me. If it's expressing the modern times, I guess it depends on who it's coming from and what it's about. Many of those books are very, very, kind of fair weather. They just, sit on the shelf. They get popular for a little while and then they're immediately forgotten about, relegated to the dustbin of history, as Trotsky said. I don't really. It depends on if one of those books stands the test of time, if one of those books is a really good indicator of the time and the place that you're interested in. And that could be the modern day. But any book that, catalogs or talks about various other books that were contemporary at the time, and goes through that zeitgeist and why those books were popular is extremely invaluable to me. So the book, why am I blanking? The House of Government. That book was is one of my favorite pieces of nonfiction ever. I absolutely love it, and it does that so sublimely well. Where in that book, he talks about what the Bolsheviks were reading, what the Russian public was reading, and why they were reading it, and what made it popular, or what made it censored, and whatnot. And then immediately I'm like, oh gosh, I need to read that. I need to read that book and understand, what was appealing about it, what people liked about it, why they wanted to read it. Because, yeah, it reveals a lot about that zeitgeist, the mood of the times. Is this an extremely depressing book? Is it a book that is filled with hope? Is it a book that is pessimistic about the world or optimistic about the world? I mean, that can reveal so much about a time and a place that you're interested in reading about. And if that's the contemporary world, then I think that makes sense too. Although I'm very close to the contemporary world, I live in it, and I think I have a pretty good idea of what the zeitgeist is without reading a book about it, but because I'm involved in it. So anyway, that's a hot for me, certainly. It just depends on what the book is about, when the book is about, and that type of thing. So that's it. That was actually really fun. So those are that's the Bookish A to Z, hot or not. I'm glad I was able to squeeze a tag in today. So you get 2 videos today, if any of those are interesting to you. Frankenstein is on the table. If anybody wants it, feel free to reach out to me. Absolutely. And that's it for me today. Thank you, BookTube.